Your running success or failure hinges on three things. First, I have to go back a couple of years and tell you a story. It was 2019, and I was a very unhappy runner. I had been injured, I had gained a lot of weight back, and I saw myself in pictures of when I would go running with my buddies, and I just didn't know or like the person that I was looking back at. It was awful, and it didn't make me feel comfortable in my own skin. So I knew at that point something had to change. But change how? Now, the one most amazing thing that happened with this whole entire experiment, I'm going to explain at the end of the video. You see, I was running like most other runners. Get out there, run for an hour, run as fast as I could, and see if I could be better the following day. And it was this repetitive cycle. Yes, I did get faster. Yes, I ran an amazing first marathon. Yes, I burned out. And it started off this cycle of trying to figure out what was the best way to run and how could I make the changes necessary to be able to keep this up long term and get back to losing the weight. I just didn't see a way that I could continue to do this, go further, enjoy the process, and get to work and do all the other things I had to do in life. I mean, I like sleep, just like you guys. So there was a challenge for me. And one of those things brought me back to a podcast that I had listened to, and it was on Trail Runner Nation. Fantastic podcast. These guys are hilarious, and I really enjoy listening to them. One of the things that I found was the ultra running shoe, and the ultra running shoe was awesome. I thought, heck, you know what? Zero drop. This would be a great thing. So that way I'm not running on my heels anymore. And then I went ahead and made another change. And that was, I saw Dr. Phil Maffetone talking about low heart rate training. And I thought, hey, this could be something that I could get into. But I didn't have a heart rate monitor at the time. But little did I know, I actually did. You see, when I got my running watch, my Garmin 640, I think it was, it actually came with a heart rate strap, and I wore it a couple of times. But I just didn't see the benefit of actually using it because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know what the numbers meant. So I put it in a drawer and walked away from it. That was until I got a Coros watch, and it came with a heart rate monitor built in. And that made things much easier to decide to go all in this whole Maffetone training. Now, there was another component I was trying to figure out. I ate a lot of carbohydrates, and I needed to figure out how I could kickstart my system to start burning fats as the fuel, as Dr. Phil Maffetone talks about. Now, if I was going to be successful at this thing, I had to figure out how I was going to kickstart my system to start burning fat as a fuel source. So what I decided to do was to do some fasting. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't for everybody, but I had actually done a couple of water fasts in previous years. I'm going to be running a 50 miler next year, and I just ran a 50 kilometer for my first ultra, I guess, and it wasn't a sanctioned race or anything like that. But I realized that I'm still not in anywhere shape that I need to be. So I am kind of rebooting my system, rebooting my body, my metabolism, and I got some aches and pains and a few other things that hopefully I'd like to get rid of, right? That's the goal. So I'm fasting. I'm gonna do a water fast for about 10 days. But this is the first time I'm actually gonna be running at a very, very low heart rate. And I want to see the effects of what a fast does while you're running in your aerobic base. So I'm a fast. Boom. 7 days, water fast. What else did I include? I went from running like 3 or 4 days a week to running every day for 2 hours. And different variations. One was a 2-day, one was a 5-day, one was a 7-day. I even did a little bit longer. And what I have to say with it, it actually works. It does kickstart the process of burning fat as a fuel source. And so I thought that's going to be what I need to do again to kind of get into that state. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, what if I do that and continue to run. What would that do? So I set up a plan and I thought, okay, at this point I had been running since September. It was November now. And so I had put in a number of months. I actually had done a half marathon. I had run a 50K, and I was kind of in November going, okay, I want to get going with this whole Maffetone method, and I want to really stick with it, and I want to be successful at it, but I want to kickstart my body to start burning fat. So I thought, wouldn't this be great to start now? And at that point, I thought, okay, 2 hours I'm going to run every single day. Things were a little quiet at this time of the year, so I thought I could get away with it during the early mornings. So over a course of 2 weeks, I actually ran 2 hours every day while fasting. I didn't eat anything. I had water, I had some salt, electrolytes, no sugar or anything, no calories. And I went through that process of keto. Now, not keto eating meat, just keto, just burning my own fat because I wasn't eating anything. And now I used Jason Fung. He is a doctor in Toronto, and I read his book. It's up on the screen here. And I looked at it, and you know, I had done this a couple of times before, but now I was kind of including a little bit more activity. But this was going to be 2 hours of running. And I thought, okay, well, let's get out and let's just do this. Now, when I started the first couple of days, it was hard. Like my heart rate was much higher. My pace just dropped. My pace just slowed down so much. And I was like miserable running around the track. It was so annoying. And it was starting to get a little bit cooler as well. But, you know, I kind of pushed through. So after a couple of days, I realized that my body had kind of really kicked into keto. It was burning my fat as a fuel source. And then I started to see some crazy results. Some of these results were astounding to me. I started to lose quite a bit of weight. Now, the first number of days, you're losing just water weight, right? Because I wasn't having any carbohydrates, I wasn't having any food. And when that happens, you drop like at least 10 pounds of water weight. Then I started to notice some crazy results. The weight that I started to lose started to go up and up. And in some cases, I was above 2 pounds a day. And I thought, whoa, okay, maybe that's a little bit too much. And I thought, well, I'm only going to be doing it for a little bit. So I continued, and my pace got slower and slower. My heart rate was higher. And after I think day 3, I hit keto. I was totally fat burning now. So now I needed to train my body to continue to use that as a fuel source. And it worked. I continued to push through each and every day, putting out these 2-hour runs. So not only was I getting my cardiovascular system in, I was being consistent, I was becoming a fat burner, and I thought, okay, a side benefit, yes, I'm losing some weight, and this is a pretty darn good thing. However, I'm not going to do this forever. I just want to do this for 2 weeks. I want to see where I'm going to be when I finish. And to my surprise, it continued to work. Once I finished the 2 weeks, I was actually getting faster than I was when I first started running. I was fully burning fat as a fuel source. I was much lighter, and I was a much happier guy. I was so focused. I was so in tune. Let's go back to that time. My mental clarity seems to be way more improved. Like my focus and attention is kind of really, I'm like zeroed in on things, right? I'm not scattered all over the place. But when I finished this crazy experiment, I thought, okay, time to get back into just slowly eating what I normally eat. However, I'm going to be a lot more particular on the type of carbohydrates that I was going to eat. And that meant a lot of the baked goods were gone, the breads were gone, the pastas were gone. I just wasn't going down that road. And I started to eat some low, like being plant-based, it's kind of hard because carbohydrates come in all of my vegetables. However, there was a slew of vegetables I could eat, which I continued to eat, and it worked out quite well. Yes, I had some protein. Yes, I had fats. And I had carbohydrates as well. However, I did try to keep it as low as I could for a period of time. Probably about 3 weeks, I kind of stopped with all of that, and I wasn't so concerned about trying to keep low keto. I thought, you know, let's just go back to eating and not having to restrict so much the carbohydrates. Because yes, there are some things I do like to eat, and they have more carbohydrates than not. And so I started to slowly incorporate those. But when I would go out for a run, I was running fasted. So I would stop eating at about 7 o'clock at night, and I wouldn't eat again until probably around lunchtime, like around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was still going out, fasted running, still burning my fat as a fuel source. But yes, I had started to consume a little bit more carbohydrates. Probably ate a little bit more fat than carbohydrates. Well, am I staying in a ketosis mode? No, I'm not. However, the majority of my food that I have is high fat. But it started to shift, and I became more carbohydrate dependent during the day than fat. And I continued to improve using the Maffetone method. And I was still able to burn just fat as a fuel source because I wasn't so hungry when I got back from running. I personally didn't really need to eat. I didn't feel like wanting to eat. And so, like I said, it was not a big deal. I wasn't craving food. I did consume some electrolytes when I would be out on one of those longer runs. But for the most part, I was good until lunchtime. And that felt good, and it continued on. So that was one of those things that I was able to do to become more of a fat burner using the Maffetone method to kickstart my metabolism, to start going down that road of intermittent fasting, so that way I could become faster running at a low heart rate, not get injured. It was just a beautiful mix of so many different things. The most amazing thing that happened on this whole experiment was my consistency. I became so consistent with everything that I was doing, and I felt so amazing at the end of the day that I wanted to keep doing what I was doing because I felt so good. So the consistency became not a problem. It just reset my whole system. And so when I talk about running in a fasted state, it just made me think things very differently because I was very hyper-focused on how much we consume as human beings every single day. How much brain energy goes into what am I going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Oh, I got to go buy some groceries. What am I going to make for dinner? Are we going to have friends over for dinner? Like all of those things. Once food was taken out of the equation, I became super focused on the things that I needed to achieve in my day. And I became very productive, very consistent, very motivated, and it made me a really much better runner at the end of it. Now, if you're looking to get back into running or you want to improve running using low heart rate training, my video right here will certainly help you down that road in achieving that. Like I always say, get out and run.